Okay, this is just a quick video to show you how to import files such as Excel files into SPSS. And so you go to File, Open, Data, and you then go direct SPSS to wherever you have the file. I happen to have it in my Downloads file. And only SPSS files show up right now, but if you click on the files of type directly underneath file name, then you can change it to Excel. And once I change it to Excel, then you can see that I can identify and select SPSS files. So here I have my sample file, which is what I'm going to be using. So now I can open the file, and I just click on Open, and SPSS is going to ask me some questions. And so I'm going to, let me go ahead and zoom in. Okay, so what we have is it's asking you to read variable names from the first row of data, and here's the Excel sheet. And on the Excel sheet, it's very important that when you do provide your Excel sheet, that your first row of data is actually the names of the variables, and then underneath that you have your data. Now notice here that I have student names, which is not numeric data. This is not numeric data, this is not numeric, and so on. So what I'm going to need to do is I can either change these into numeric codes within Excel or within SPSS, whichever you find easier. It really doesn't matter as long as you are consistent and you do it accurately. So for example, if you wanted to do it within Excel, you could search for, using Control F or Find and Select, you could search for AA, which is your first variable here, and you would, let's say that you have decided on your coding, you're going to go alphabetic, and you're going to go AA is 1, H is 2, O is 3, and W is 4. So here you would replace all your AAs with 1, and it replaces it. And make sure that you only select that column, because you have to be careful not to do other columns, which could result in problems, because for example here we have a W which is also in this column, but you may not necessarily code them the same. So make sure that because this has different meaning than this W, so make sure that when you are replacing with the number that you're identifying, that you do it within that column, and that you note what each one is. In other words, you should have a code sheet. You can either put it on the Excel sheet behind there. For example, you could put AA is 1, H is 2, O is 3, and W is 4, and then you would move on to your next variable. You need to know what those are so that when you're in SPSS you can also include that information. So anyway, that's what you would do for each of these columns, and I'm going to go ahead and, since there's only 5 of them, it's simple enough to do it this way, but you definitely don't want to do it this way when you have hundreds of variables, or even 100 cases, not variables, because you're very prone to make mistakes imputing each one by hand. So now that you have that, let's go back to this. So now that you have imported your data, or you have checked to make sure that your variable names are in the first row of data, you can check that. This is the correct worksheet. If you had put it on the second sheet, then you could click on that button there and it will pull up any other sheets that you might have active. If you only want a particular range, you could put that there. But I think that's all we want to do. And so now we can hit OK. And then you get the data. And you can see, because this is before I recoded, you have the information there in the way it was originally. And so now I can show you, let me show you what it looks like here. So you can see the data is still in the same way that it was before. So now what I'm going to do is transform recode into different variable. So transform recode into different variable. And when I do that, I get this pop-up box. And the variable that I'm first going to want to recode is ethnicity. And I'm going to move ethnicity into that box. And I'm going to call this, because I'm calling it a different variable, I have to call it a different name. And I'm going to call it just eth. And I'm going to say in my label that this is recoded ethnicities. And so now ethnicity is going to be coded into eth, and I need to click on the old and new values. So let me make sure that you can see this. So you have old and new values here. You need to click on that and notice that, again, ethnicity, which is the way it was coded originally, is going to be recoded with numbers instead of words. And when I click on old and new values, I get a new pop-up box. And in this new pop-up box, what I need to indicate is what the old value is. Well, the old value was AA, the new value will be 1, and then I hit add. The old value was H, the new value will be 2. The old value was O, the new value is 3. And finally the old value is W, the new value is 4. And what this does for us, and let me zoom in again, is that you put the old value in the left box, the new value in the right box. But what you will have is now what SPSS will do is take the string of AA and replace it with a 1 for all cases. And same thing with H, O, and W. For all cases, SPSS will replace the values that you have with the values that you indicated. So you hit continue, and you can hit paste. And so now what it is saying, let me zoom in, is it is asking SPSS to recode ethnicity from the string and the value that you're given into eth, and then the period, and then the variable labels are eth is going to be called recoded ethnicities, and execute is to make it go. So there's a period at the end of each of these. Simple syntax to tell SPSS to recode. And so we're going to run all that. And of course nothing will happen in your output file because that's not where it's happening at. But if you'll notice now in your data view, there's an extra column, and it's called eth, which is what we called it. We could switch to variable view and we could see that there is indeed a new variable. If you want to move that variable, you just need to click on the row number and drag it to where you want it to be. I always like to double check to make sure I haven't made any errors, so I drag it next to the variable that I was recoding. and then I click back on my data view, and I can double check to see what I did, because sometimes I forget one of the codes. So for example, if there had been a label or a string variable that I hadn't recoded, that one would show up as blank. But in this case, you know, all AAs are 1s, you'll see that it did it. W's are 4s, 0s are 3s, and H's are 2s. And so you would do that for whatever variable you wanted SPSS to recode. And that's all there is to it.